Because this is so important that we have an understanding of what happens here when we come into the presence of the glorious God of all of creation with irreverence. Okay, you just read chapter 9, and I want to dive into this a little deeper because this is so important that we have an understanding of what happens here when we come into the presence of the glorious God of all of creation with irreverence. As we saw in Leviticus, the 10th chapter, Nadab and Abihu were authorized. They were authorized to come into the presence of God. They were priests. And they came in and offered profane fire. Now, profane means to treat what is sacred as common, to treat what is holy as ordinary. So they come into the presence of God with an irreverent attitude, and boom, they're dead. I mean, we're talking like 6 feet under the ground, buried dead. Okay, did God just get angry and just reach out and smite them? No. Here's the deal. If you go to the beach on a nice summer's day and you have your swimsuit on and you lay out on the beach, you enjoy it. It's wonderful. You get a nice little tan from it. You feel refreshed, a lot of vitamin D. It's healthy for you. But the sun is 93 million miles away from us. If you choose to go near that sun, let's say 10,000 miles away, it will burn you up and fry you in a heartbeat. So what we see here is the greater the glory of God, the swifter the judgment. The more concise and quick is the judgment. So if you look at Nadab and Abihu, were Eli's sons a couple hundred years later. They go to the same tabernacle. They are taking offerings by manipulation and force. They are committing adultery with the women that are coming to the tabernacle. Okay, these are like pastors that or ministers that are in the church. The woman comes to the church and they go to the back room and commit adultery with her. I mean, whoa, this is 90 feet away from where Nadab and Abihu were judged. Okay, what's going on here? Well, if you look at 1 Samuel chapter 3, in the time of Nadab and Abihu, the Bible says the word of the Lord was rare and there was no widespread revelation. When God's presence comes, we get revelation because God will reveal things to us, right? Well, what happened was his presence had lifted. So in essence now, they're not 10,000 miles from the sun. They're like Neptune far away, okay? There is no effect. They're not even getting vitamin D. They're not even getting a suntan. So there are various degrees of God's presence. You say, but John, that's Old Testament. Wait a minute. There was a man and a wife in the New Testament who brought an offering. Nothing wrong with that. But they did it with irreverence and they were buried under the ground. So what we're seeing here is the greater the glory, the swifter the judgment. Because if you look at that, Peter walks right out of that building and they lay the sick on the streets of Jerusalem. Not one street, streets. And Peter just walks by and they get up healed. Everybody got healed. That's like a pastor walking through a big old hospital and just walking down the hall and emptying the hospital. That's the kind of glory, the greatness that was on Peter. So when Ananias and Sapphira lied to them, there was instant judgment. Okay? Now, there's been pastors lied to in the 20th and 21st century. The people haven't fallen over dead. Why? Maybe we're not quite close to the sun as we should be. You understand what I'm saying? The glory is not manifesting. The Apostle Paul made a statement that is absolutely amazing. He said, some men's sins are evident, preceding them to judgment, but the sins of others are manifested later. What Paul is saying is, when the glory of God is strong, what is willfully disobedient, irreverent, will be more swiftly judged, whereas with others, it happens later. If you look at Nadab and Abihu, it happened later. They were killed by the Philistines, put to death by the Philistines. But just because God's judgment is delayed doesn't mean it's denied. That's why the fear of the Lord keeps us in touch with what pleases God, even if his presence isn't strong. And we'll talk about that in another chapter.